Привет!
Я комисар Бинков представляю вам.
Hi, I, Commissar Binkov, present you Greece vs. Turkey, featuring Cyprus. War between Turkey and Greece might easily start on Cyprus. Both countries already have some forces there, but Turkey taking Cyprus is a no small task. Cypriot forces are pretty large for a nation so small. It also has some heavy armor and air defenses. Though Turkish side has a stronger army already at site, Turkey would probably bring in some reinforcements before properly taking over the whole island, so it minimizes its casualties. Of course, using planes and troops in Cyprus would mean less resources available to fight Greece. Sadly for Greece, chances of it helping Cyprus and preventing a takeover would be virtually zero. The island is too far away from Greece, and Turkish navy is a bit stronger. Greek navy would be forced to get away from the cover of its air defenses and expose itself to Turkish air force on the way to Cyprus. Submarines and fast attack boats, which both navies feature prominently, are more suited for a defensive war, not crossing the high seas first and fighting far from their bases. Turkey would fare better there. Greece could not use its anti-submarine platforms so far from its shores, while Turkey could rely on theirs to further blunt the edge of Greek submarine fleet. It is thus unlikely Greece could offer meaningful reinforcements. Cyprus would fall, the only question being how many troops would Turkey dedicate to that operation and how long the conquest would take. Given the geography, that conquest wouldn't come quickly, possibly taking several months. In light of all that, Greece may not even choose to go for Cyprus, but rather try to use its navy to cling onto its exposed islands close to the Turkish coast. Prolonging Cypriot struggle could be achieved by Greece going on the offensive where it is a bit stronger and trying to catch Turkey unprepared. Compared to Turkey, Greece has a bit more troops stationed near the border it shares with Turkey. If acting quickly and taking initiative, Greece could try and push towards the Sea of Marmara before Turkey manages to send sizable reinforcements. The area is fairly flat and mostly used for agriculture. Motorized formations could move through it fairly quickly. However, first the Maritsa River would need to be crossed. If Turkey is given enough warning, such a crossing may not even happen, as Turkey could amass more troops. Crossing such a river against a prepared opponent would be very hard. But with bigger initial border forces, Greece could have some head start if it chooses to do such an preemptive action, with all its political risk. War in the air would very much shape any battlefield, the one on Cyprus, battle for Mediterranean, or the Greek push eastward. Turkey nominally has more combat planes, but a small part of them would be tied to Cyprus operations. Strategic surveillance ability is roughly similar on both sides, but Turkey has the edge in tactical recon. Tactical recon again can be hard to exploit without control of the air. To have any success up north, Greece would have to rush forward before Turkey manages to mobilize its more numerous forces and reposition them west of Istanbul. Air campaign to attack bridges, both over Maritsa River and the Straits, would be waged by both sides. The two Turkish tunnels under the Bosphorus Strait are quite deep and would be hard to hit, but their entrances may be harassed. Greece might want to dedicate most of its air forces for the push towards Istanbul, but Turkey would operate closer to its bases, so its sortie rates might be a bit better. Pressing forward would mean Greeks would lose more planes than Turks. Another issue for Greeks would be Turkish air defenses. Thankfully for Greece, those are not very numerous, nor can most of them cover medium altitudes. On the other hand, if Greece manages to move its air defenses alongside its advancing forces, it may provide it with much needed protection of its exposed armored formations. Greek air defenses are much more numerous and more modern. Greece has a clear upper hand there over the Turkish air defense capabilities. One could say the two sides would be roughly evenly matched in the air, with Turkey having more planes but losing more planes due to Greek air defenses. Turkey does have some edge in standoff cruise and ballistic missiles though. At the end of the air war, Turkey may be left with a few more planes if it's content with not attacking Greece, but probably not a number that would be strategically decisive, as Greece would still have a fair bit of its air defense edge left over. Still, for all the Greek effort, as its forces get closer to the strait, Turkish might would quickly get more numerous, and the topography would eventually get less suited to fast movement of armored formations, if Greeks even managed to get that far, which is questionable. Frontline would get narrower, and Turkish formations would put Greek flanks in danger, making it hard to exploit the temporary Greek numerical superiority. If Greeks push south, they might be able to create a choke point at the Dardanelles Strait crossing for Turkey, forcing Turkey to move most of their reinforcements through just Istanbul. The narrow front line would work both ways though, with Greek forces possibly holding on against ever-growing number of Turkish soldiers. Turkish army is quite a bit bigger. It uses more conscript soldiers, and a part of it would be tied on Cyprus. Greece, on the other hand, has its National Guard units tied to defense of its eastern islands. When it comes to the forces available for the Battle of East Thrace Peninsula, Turkey will still have access to a far bigger force, given enough time to bring it over the straits. It also has a larger reserve and paramilitary, though the latter may also be involved with securing various unrest areas in Turkey, as such may happen in a war like this, allowing only for a part of the paramilitary to be used against Greece. Paramilitary not really being trained in combined arms operations, nor having experience with heavy equipment, would not be very useful in offensive operations. But they could still be very useful in guarding islands, for example. And islands in the Aegean Sea would be another major point of battle in this war. While those closest to Turkey are in theory to be demilitarized, in practice they do have contingents of Greek National Guard. With all those islands being so close to Turkey, they would find themselves under Turkish assault. Greece may try to help and reinforce them, but the issue of stronger Turkish navy and closer Turkish air bases would mean it would be an uphill battle. Turkey's air mobility assets are also much more numerous. Furthermore, so many islands to defend means Greece would not be nearly as flexible as to maneuver and concentrate its forces. Turkey, on the other hand, could pick one island after another and concentrate its forces where it chooses. Turkish amphibious assault assets are fairly numerous. With Turkey's proximity, Turkey could hope to get its forces to those islands more easily than Greece could reinforce them. These islands in particular would be very vulnerable and would likely fall. Though, as with any sea or air assault, Turkish losses would be very high. Greece would be forced to choose whether to expose its navy and try to help all the islands, or accept the fact the islands nearest to Turkey are indefensible and protect more important islands in the back. Island of Crete, for example, would be foolish for Turkey to try and go after, as it is a bit closer to Greece and Turkish naval edge is not that great. Greek submarine fleet is more modern, and Turkish anti-submarine helicopters would need some distance to cross to Crete. Therefore, Turkish losses just to get the chance to put soldiers onto Crete would be too great to make it worthwhile. Important to note, initial Greek push into Turkey assumes quite a bit of surprise. If that doesn't happen, Turkey may stop any Greek assault right at the Maritsa River. At the same time, that would mean a compact Greek defense line on a tiny stretch of land, as well as Greek air forces in advantageous position. If the surprise attack does happen, Turkey may not have time to push Greece back in a short year-long scenario. But in a multi-year scenario, Turkish stronger domestic arms industry and much greater population pool would grind down the Greeks. Probable end result would be even more small islands being taken, as well as Turkey trying to push into Greek territory up north. Luckily for Greece, the front line there is very narrow and mountainous. Greece would also enjoy control of the air over its territory due to its air force and air defenses. Turkey would be unable to exploit its numerical advantage under such conditions, and the front line would come to a standstill. Forcing into Greece to get tiny bits of its territory, as well as performing always dangerous air and sea assaults, would lead to a few times higher Turkish casualties. With that in mind, a relatively short war would see no overwhelming winner, but Turkey would secure some sort of victory. Long-term war would favor the Turks even more, but that's another story.